How to Write a Successful CV, Resume, and Letter of Interest, presented by Dr. Leslie Mills, the Director for Career Services at A&M Corpus Christi. What is the difference between a resume and a curriculum vitae or a CV? Curriculum vitae or CV is actually Latin for course of life. In contrast, resume is French for summary. While both documents are tailored for specific jobs or companies you're applying for, they should represent you as the best qualified candidate, and both are used to get an interview. And both should not include any personal interests, but instead your professional interest and goals and ambitions. They do have some striking similarities, but there are also major differences between a curriculum vitae and a resume. A curriculum vitae emphasizes your academic accomplishments. It is used when typically applying for positions in academia, for example, when trying to get fellowships and grants. The length of your curriculum vitae usually depends upon the experience you have and includes a list of complete list of publications, posters, and presentations that you may have done. There are particular elements of a CV that we see most commonly. A CV is also going to include things such as your education, your honors, and your awards. You also include anything like your association memberships. Similar to a resume, your CV will include any professional experience you might have. It's going to include your research interests, both your current research as well as any future research interests you have. It can include any teaching experience you might have. This teaching experience can also include things like SI sessions that you may have been the leader for, or any teaching assistant positions that you've held. And your curriculum vitae will also include a list of professional presentations, publications, and papers that you've presented. These may include presentations or papers or publications that you co-presented or co-worked on with a faculty member. One major difference between a curriculum vitae and a resume is that curriculum vitae can be in paragraph format, where a resume is typically in bullets. Let's specifically look at the research interest in your current research section on your curriculum vitae. This is a section that's particularly different than a resume. It's usually going to be used for graduate applications and possibly for individuals applying for prospective professor or fellowships. You're going to briefly summarize your research interests with 4 to 6 key descriptors ranging from the very general to the very specific when it comes to your research. For example, you can say something like, I have broad interest in social and political psychology, particularly the resolution of international conflict. Specifically, I'm interested in the role that decision heuristics and biases play in Arab-Israel relations. Current research is also something that you can add to your curriculum vitae. In your current research section, you want to describe any current research you're working on in 1 or 2 paragraphs. This oftentimes can be an overview of your thesis work if you're a graduate student working on your thesis, or any major research projects you're working on as an undergrad. If you're working in more than one area, you can summarize each project in a separate paragraph. You want to include with a brief statement describing your future program of research for the next 5 years or so. So if you have anticipations of future research, you can include that in there. Now let's kind of skip forward to the purpose of a resume. Both resumes and curriculum vitae are used to highlight your skills and to talk about your interest in your abilities to work with a company and work for an employer. The difference is that a resume is going to highlight the skills and accomplishments, not be a complete document of everything you've ever done. A purpose of a resume is to be used as a marketing or branding tool, very similar to a CV. It's going to present your academic and other achievements and also demonstrate your value to employers. What are you going to bring to the company or to the employer? What skills and interests you have? A resume is typically in a format with including your contact information, your education, where you can include some relevant coursework, your experience, which may include both paid and unpaid positions. It can include things like your internships, any volunteer work, as well as any paid work experience you might have. Your resume also should have a skills section where you talk about any languages that you might have, any technical skills or computer skills, software programs that you're familiar with. And also think about things like your soft skills or things like teamwork and collaboration or oral and written communication skills. These are all things you may add into your resume. You will typically format your resume in reverse chronological order with your most recent information going first and your past experiences in each section going after that. Resumes typically are 1 page in length, where a curriculum vitae may be multiple pages. Some optional sections that you might include in your resume are things like an objective statement, your research, any relevant coursework that you might have, leadership positions you may have held, volunteer work you may have done, community service projects that you've worked on, and any honors and awards you might have received. Again, resumes typically are 1 page in length. Ideally, a resume is a document that employers scan, and they want to be able to briefly scan through that 1 page, with my most relevant information to the employer being on the top of the page and working it my way down. At no time should a resume go over 2 pages in length. My margins on my resume can be anything from a 0.5 to a 1-inch margin. I'm typically going to use a 10 to a 12-point font, with my headers being a little bit larger font. I want to use a very common font type, something like Times Romans or Calibri or other traditional fonts. You want to avoid using tables or charts or graphs or pictures on your resume. You don't want to use photos or social security numbers or personal information such as your age, your gender, or your marital status. And you also should avoid putting your hobbies on your resume. Those best resumes that we find out there are the resumes that state objective facts. They're also the resumes that not only list what you did at a job, it's not just a list of your job duties, but instead you identify the accomplishments that you had in that position. So what did you accomplish? What improved at the company or with the organization as a result of you being a part of it? Overall, resumes should be organized, consistent with a unified focus, and information should be relevant and related to the professional and academic activities that you are applying for. Overall, resumes should be easy to read and well written. Make sure that your resume is proofread by a family member, faculty member, friend, or career services to ensure that there are no spelling errors or grammatical errors. You want to tailor your resume to each position or each employer that you're applying for. You want to make sure you've done your research about the employer and identify the position description that you're applying for. You want to look at the description for any skills, any experience that they're anticipating you have, and making sure that you customize your resume for that position. You want to describe how your skills, your education, your experience all match the needs of the position employer. You want to be concise in your resume. You don't want to say too much at once, and you also want to be specific and use descriptive words and numbers. So instead of saying led groups of prospective students on tours of campus while answering questions and encouraging them to apply, resulting in more informed, excited applicants, you could simply say something like led 3 campus tours weekly for more than 50 prospective students and parents. Instead of saying something like showed leadership skills with group project, you want to specify how many people were in your group project and what was the end product. So something like led a group of 5 students in team project by creating schedules and delegating tasks to supported team productivity, and the completion of a 25-page research paper might be more appropriate. You want to vary your action verbs, but always start your sections and your bullets with action verbs. Instead of saying just was responsible for answering the phones and did scheduling for student appointments, I instead could say answered phones and scheduled student appointments. Full sentences aren't always necessary, and you want to make sure to drop all personal pronouns in your resume. We should never see an I, he, me, they statement on my resume. So let's move on from the resume to the letter of interest, or your cover letter. Basically, a cover letter should accompany many resumes or CVs when you're applying for positions. It's going to introduce your resume or your CV to the reader. It wants to draw your attention to you and individualize to each position as well. This is going to reflect your knowledge of the employer, so it's going to show how much research you've done about the employer. Oftentimes our cover letters can improve our chances of getting an interview, and it demonstrates the interest we have in the company or the vacancy position. When you're writing a cover letter or a letter of interest, you want to make sure you analyze and do your research about the company, about the position, and about the organization you're applying for. You want to identify the job description and note any keywords that you might want to use both in your resume as well as in your cover letter. You want to do your research about the company and know a little bit about them so that you can add that in their cover letter as well. It's really important to draft, edit, and proofread multiple times for your cover letter. And you can save this first cover letter that you do as kind of a template to use for future cover letters. A standard format for a cover letter should look very similar to the image that is shown on the slide. It can be one page, typically 3 to 4 paragraphs. Again, margins are 0.5 to 1 inch margin, and the font size is 10 to 12 point font. You're going to use, again, an Arial or Times New Roman font style, very similar to what you're going to use on your resume. You will single space each paragraph, but use double space between the paragraphs in your closing. And you also want to make sure you left justify the paragraphs. What should your paragraphs include is oftentimes a question we get. The first paragraph should be an introduction paragraph. You want to identify the position that you're applying for and state your interest in applying for this position. If you know and have someone who's referred you for the company or the position, you can also include that person's information in this first paragraph. The body of your paragraph should include, or the second paragraph in the body of your cover letter should describe your interest in the position. You want to state your skills, your experiences that you're bringing to that company that specifically match the position requirements. Again, looking at the job description, find what are the skills and experiences that you have that match with those same things they're looking for. Again, use action verbs and quantifiers to demonstrate your story. You want to highlight your skills and accomplishments in relation to the employer's needs. Finally, that third paragraph or your closing paragraph, you want to state your desire for an interview, identify when you will follow up, and give them information about how to follow up with you, and always include thank you for your time and consideration. Personal statements are also things that oftentimes are asked for or requested when applying to graduate school programs. For any of you who are looking at applying to graduate programs, you want to know the requirements of the program when you're writing your personal statement. Each program might be different. You want to really think about your professional goals. Why did you choose your specific field of study, and why are you interested in that specific graduate program? You want to be specific and sincere. You want to tell them what motivates you and why you will be successful in their program. And again, I can't stress enough, proofread, proofread, proofread. You want to proofread your resume, your curriculum vitae, your cover letter, and any personal statements that you might be submitting. For any questions that you might have regarding cover letters, resumes, CVs, or personal statements, feel free to contact Career Services. We can be emailed at career.services@tmucc.edu, or you may call 361-825-2628 for more information. Thank you and have a great day.